To start off, I took this half of the doorknob, the one that doesn't have the cord sticking out of it, and pressed on the side of this plastic piece right here, which opened up this little compartment. Once I put the cover to the side, I then installed 4 AAA batteries, and then went and grabbed this metal shaft right here, and fed the cord coming out of this part through the metal shaft, and then pushed the shaft into place. With that done, I then went over to the door that I needed to install this on to remove the old doorknob. The only tool I needed to use for this was a screwdriver that worked with my current lock screws. You will also need one for the new screws if it's different. Once I got close to completely unscrewing it, I used my left hand to grab both sides of the doorknob and hold it in place so it wouldn't fall out when I completely removed the screw. Then once the screws were removed, I then went ahead and pulled off both sides of the doorknob. With those out, now I just needed to remove this middle section by unscrewing this part on the side of the door right here. Once I had that unscrewed, I could go ahead and just simply pull it out. I then grabbed the new middle section of the door lock and slid this through the side and screwed it in. Make sure you screw these in pretty tight and that the center of the lock is pretty even inside the door. With that securely installed on the door, I then grabbed the outer portion of the door handle and slid the cord and then metal shaft through the hole in the door opening. Once I was sure it went through properly, I then went and grabbed these screw parts right here and then moved the doorknob into the typical position so that I could line up the screws on the door handle to the ones with the center part. And then of course I screwed these in. The only difference here being that you can't use a screwdriver on this, so you need to use your hand. You also don't have to worry about these being very securely in, as we'll tighten them later. With those now installed, it's time to add the other side of the doorknob. For this, you may need this extra spring part right here if you have a thicker door. However, because mine's very standard size, I did not need this. In fact, I couldn't use it because it would have made it too big. I then took the inside portion of the doorknob and ran the wire through the center and pulled it out the other side. Once I had that through, I then lined up the metal shaft and pushed it into position. When you do this, the doorknob should be very close to being in the proper position. Next, I grabbed the screws themselves and slightly shifted the doorknob into the proper position so that I could screw them in. This is probably the most difficult part because they didn't put the holes in a very easy to access position, so you kind of have to hold the doorknob out of the way while you screw them in. You may also need to screw them in at kind of an angle or use a special screwdriver. As you tighten these outer screws, it will also tighten those inner screws that we installed earlier. Once you have both of those screws in, you can now go ahead and attach the cable to the port on the doorknob. And then fold up the wire like this so that you can put on that back section. And just like that, the installation process is complete.